All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get ready to, and continue with our programming. Yeah. All right, so I'm kind of regretting the fact many of you might have noticed we're actually recording everything today, and so I'm kind of vomiting in my mouth a little bit as I say this. But Matt McQuaid exited the stage and accused me of being Senator McCarthy for the backhanded communist comment I made. So I am going to say it once only, but go Bucks. That was very heartfelt, if you couldn't tell. Hey, so as the parent of 3 children, age 19 and older, I tell you, I find myself frequently astonished by the sheer volume of opportunities that young people have presented to them these days. There are all sorts of programs and camps and educational tracks and you name it, sports activities, all sorts of stuff that I think a lot of us would say, hey, we clearly didn't have that when we were young. And like any self-respecting parent, I do take pride in constantly reminding my kids how lucky that I was able to survive my boring and choiceless education. But I will admit, the one thing I don't envy of my kids and of all young people is the burden of the decisions that are placed on them and that they have to make. And it seems like at increasingly younger years, that there's more decisions they have to make and of fairly significant consequence. So this next panel we have assembled is going to illuminate for us the many viable career pathways that currently exist for our students that continue to evolve, and to help us better define what it means to be career ready, right? We hear that phrase a lot. What does it mean to be career ready? We're going to talk about some of the barriers and obstacles that they frequently encounter with their programming, and perhaps give us some insight on how we can better prepare our students and their families to make informed choices early and often in their education. And your panel moderator today really needs no introduction, but I'm going to give it anyway. Dr. Dion Rosser-Mims is the Vice Chancellor of our Troy University Phoenix City campus. She's also Vice Chair of the Chips for Chips Coalition. And Dion will of course, introduce the members of our panel. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Dion Rosser-Mims and the panelists of Seamless Transitions.
Thank you, General Helms. All right, I'm going to follow suit and say, go Ohio State. Go Dogs. I have to say that in same order. Good afternoon. How are you doing? All right, give me some more energy. Good afternoon. We've got 5 more hours. Okay, you ready for the? Okay. So we have an exciting discussion this afternoon in this next segment on really doubling down on understanding the pathways, the opportunities, as Andy mentioned, that high school students, and we're going to delve into the adult student or adult learner as well, the various pathways to employment. And so before we begin, I'd like for each of the panelists, and we have an esteemed panel here, to introduce themselves, where you work, and anything else that you'd like to share with the audience.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Josh Laney. I am the director of the Alabama Office of Apprenticeship. Our office was started in 2019, and is specifically responsible for expanding registered apprenticeship programs and all other forms of work-based learning across the state. From a background perspective, I taught in Phoenix City for years, was an assistant principal and principal over there, and then went and worked at the State Department of Education for about 5 years, and then was appointed to this position by the governor in 2019. It's good to be here with so many people that I know and have lived around for a long time, and see that we're taking a concerted effort as a group to work on these questions and try to resolve some of the challenges that face us. They're not unique to us, but the effort and the focus that's being placed on it is sometimes unique. And I would just encourage you, as we talk today, whether we're hearing examples from Alabama, Georgia, it doesn't matter. These principles and these ideas that we're going to be talking about are applicable in either situation. The business community and the employment community does not respect our school district boundaries or our college system service areas. They don't care. They need workers. And people who are looking for jobs don't only look in your school district or your community college or your university system service area. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Josh.
Hey, good afternoon. Laura Bailey. I am a former CTE teacher and CTE director in Auburn City Schools, just down the road, and have been at the Alabama Department of Education for the last 4 years. And my oversight there includes the health science, human services, education and training, and hospitality and tourism clusters, as well as curriculum as a whole. And as many of you know, we are, Alabama is going to be an early adopter of the new framework, and so we are working really quickly to get everybody ready for the new clusters. We're going from 16 to 14, so very excited. I'm also a parent of a senior in high school and a junior in college, so this work is very personal to me.
Good afternoon. My name is Ben McCumber. I am the Executive Director for Secondary Initiatives with the Technical College System of Georgia, where I get to support the school districts and our 22 colleges and the work that they do, including our dual enrollment program, dual achievement, which are our high schools that serve, that are at our colleges, our accelerated career diploma, which I'm sure I'll talk about today as a pathway. And as we all know in education, and after my years as a CTAE teacher and a principal, other duties is assigned.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tim Vincent, and currently I'm the program specialist for the Architecture, Construction, Communications, and Transportation Pathways of Georgia. It's about 36 pathways, in which I manage the finance piece of it, the grants, the curriculum, teacher training, et cetera. I've been there about 1.5 years. A little prior about me is I was here in Muskogee County for 33 years, where one, I was a student first, so, but then also a teacher. I taught welding for 17 years just down the street at Jordan Vocational High School, College and Career Academy. Was the Youth Apprenticeship Work-Based Learning Coordinator for Muskogee County School District for about 11 years. And my last 5 years was the CEO of the College and Career Academy as we converted Jordan to a College and Career Academy approach. And so I'm just glad to be here. I hope I can help you today. Thanks.
Wonderful. All right, so I'm going to, for our panelists, let's keep it high level for the moment. And I'd like for you to envision if you were kings and queen, a queen for the day. And in relation to the title of the session, Seamless Transitions, Optimizing Student Success, honing in on seamless transitions, what does a seamless transition look like in the context of student success across educational stages? So if you were king and kings and queens, a queen for the day, what would you envision that being, a seamless transition? How would that look as students transition through their educational experience and then into the workforce? I would ask, I'm going to turn to Bennett first, and then Laura, and then any of the other panelists, if you would respond, if you would like to.
I was sitting here hoping you wouldn't call on me. I think you saw that on my face. I would say if a seamless transition to me, and coming again from K-12 to higher ed with the technical college system, I think the biggest part of that seamless transition is that we get down in some of the work that the DOE has done here in Georgia of career awareness for students in elementary and middle school, but so that by the time the students are in high school, they truly are looking at the career areas that they are interested in. And for me, I always see that as a junior or a senior, my hope would be that the students are getting apprenticeship, college credentials, real world credentials before they graduate. And whether they are all the way ready, because we know some careers, they're probably not all the way ready yet when they graduate from high school, but they're on their way and ready to transition into our technical colleges and then on to 4-year to pursue those career paths. So I too came from that, I hate to say it was a choiceless world, but the world of everybody takes the same classes, and you know that I struggled. When I dropped out of college and went into law enforcement, and then went back and figured out what I wanted to do. But part of that was because I'd never had that career conversation. So I think in that perfect world, we start providing those pathways and that advisement, and everybody is on the same team and not worried about their sandbox or their silo. The ultimate thing is what's best for the student and what's best for the community.
All right, Laura, turning it over to you. Okay.
I think back to my 7th grade year. I was a student in upstate New York, and for the first time, I get to experience career tech education. But because I am a female, I got to go to home ec and have my little egg baby and bag of flour that I carried around with me, while all of my male friends got to go to shop, which is where I really wanted to be. That was my first exposure to career tech. So if I had my wish, I would wish that the students in Alabama, Georgia, the United States come out graduated being prepared for the next steps. In Alabama, we have a career development model that really goes through an awareness piece and an exploration piece and a preparation piece. And I wish that it was taught to fidelity, and so that all students were prepared upon graduation for their next step. And we all know that it looks different, but the training, applying to college, finding a full-time job, that would be optimal.
Excellent. All right, Josh, Tim, do you want to respond to that question?
You know, as I sat here thinking about this question, I think we're experiencing some of that already. As I came onto the DOE staff, one of the first things I was challenged to do was write K-12 standards, K-5 standards, kindergarten through 5th, for CTAE. And so in my areas, when you think about construction of giving a skill saw to a kindergartner, you may question that, and so do I, and so do we. However, you know, if you're king for a day or queen for a day, and you could really wave that magic wand, the experience and the awareness that a kindergartner will have just in the conversation that a construction worker or a welder or machinist is, you know, they're exposed to it from an awareness perspective. So I'll say this, it's brand new and it's rolling out slowly. I was in a meeting with some training with some teachers on Tuesday in Gainesville, where we rolled out a few dollars for grants to bring in elementary and middle school students into the construction sector. So we had 7 elementary teachers there learning how to teach, not necessarily at the kindergarten level, but probably a 3 through 5 level. And it was really cool to see and hear and how those teachers are adapting those standards. So I can tell you that it's brand new, and we're learning as we speak. We're not going to hurt any kids in the process. That's the first thing, but it's the awareness piece that I think as a kindergartner that you start learning about the careers, and then as you go through, to echo the point that Ben made, you know, to go from elementary to middle to high school and have a direction and have those credentials that walk with you to your, either to TCSG or to your 4-year university. That's a perfect world for a student, and it's just opportunity. Thanks.
Thank you. Let's move on. Well, any comments? You could, okay, great, okay. So let's shift gears a bit and hone in on what are their most significant challenges when transitioning between academic stages or even the workforce? What are you seeing from your purview?
I can take that one. We heard their awareness, exploration, and preparation. That in itself is a challenge. A lot of our activities as educators have tended to be focused, especially in the career aspects and the work-based learning aspects. We've been more heavily focused on the preparation end. So awareness is exactly what it sounds like. You know there are jobs in this industry. You have some clue that industry exists. Exploration is, I think I'm interested in healthcare and I want to go and find out if that's really an industry I want to go into, and it turns out I pass out when I see blood, then maybe I don't need to be a nurse. But that doesn't mean I need to get out of healthcare. There are other opportunities, so that exploration there is key. But where we have tended to spend most of our time is on the preparation end of that spectrum, and that is technical skill attainment. So I've already identified that I want to be a nurse, or I want to be a welder, or I want to be a teacher, or whatever. And we have tons of programs for that, but we've got 2 big challenges there. We're either getting the wrong people into them or nobody into them. One of the first things we did when my office was established, we deal directly with employers. We are an economic development activity, and we heard an outcry from a particular region in our state about desperate need for machinists, skilled machinists. We've got to have them. And we worked with one of our local community colleges, and they got a couple of $1 million, I don't know, it was a bunch of money, and built out a really, really nice machining lab Tim would have loved. 5-axis this and that, and all, you know, I'm not a subject matter expert in that stuff, but it was amazing. And they opened it up, and not a soul, not a single individual signed up for that class that first semester because we hadn't done any awareness or exploration. And then the next semester, so the employers, of course, were quite disappointed. And everybody goes out, and they're just beating the bushes, looking for anybody with a pulse who can sign up for this class. And that's exactly what they got, was anybody with a pulse that could sign up for that class. And then they found out, there's a lot of math in being a machinist. So those folks washed out. So we built this really beautiful preparation and technical skill attainment program, but we didn't have anything on the back end of that. So that's why our office spends so much effort, and Laura's office, and we've engaged across the state. And I hope to be able to provide a copy of a handbook that we developed that really kind of breaks down the purposes of those different types of learning: awareness, exploration, preparation. And it's a continuum, so those are not hard silos. Some things accomplish a little of both. But then also gives further definitions and examples. One of the confusing things for employers and definitely for students, and probably if we had folks in here talk to each other, the confusion would be mismatch in terminology. When we say things like work-based learning, a lot of our secondary school folks have a very specific idea in their mind of what work-based learning looks like. And then if you say cooperative education, well, that's a certain type, right? And that has these certain rules, and it's a course credit, and you got to get this many hours. But that's not what the employers who are hiring engineers out of the university to come do. So that's a big challenge. And then just real quick, I'll also add that the way we develop the content that we're training is a big challenge. When it comes time to revise our math curriculum, we're going to look across the state, and we're going to find the 10 or 15 or 20, however many it is, best math teachers in the state, and we're going to lock them in the basement of the Gordon Persons building in Montgomery, which is a dreadful place. That's where my office was when I was there. And we're going to have them tell each other what kids need to know about math. And they're going to update the curriculum with what math teachers think kids need to know about math. And then they're going to go out and they're going to promulgate that curriculum across the state, and teachers are going to essentially apply that treatment to students. This is the math you need to know, and then send them out in the world and hope that we train them in the right thing.
And that's happening even today.
Everywhere. And we call that the train and pray model. And so we're trying to get away from that. It's got to start at the employer end with a competency-driven formula, and we can go into how that's developed in a little more detail.
Great, thank you. Others?
I can think of two just challenges or opportunities for us. One is teacher certification. So while CTE is expanding tremendously across the nation and we want to provide more access to our students, we cannot find the teachers to teach them. And so that continues to be a barrier. We have one school system in Alabama, in West Alabama, in the Black Belt, who has one certified teacher in the entire school. And that is a reality for public education across the country. So we need to expand certification, make efforts to get to attract teachers to classrooms. And I can't think of my second one. Sorry.
It'll come to you.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would say I have a couple things. One, we go back to what we've probably been talking about since I got into workforce education 18 years ago, is the parent expectation when we're talking with our students. And I have a very personal example. My 15-year-old is in audio engineering courses just an hour up the road here in Noonan. He doesn't need to go to a 4-year when he graduates. In fact, he's getting paid now. People hire him now to do live audio at 15. Now, I'm his chauffeur. I'm trying to get out of that business. But for my parents, they can't wrap their mind around that. That I just talked to my mother the other day, and well, he's not going to go to a 4-year school. Well, Mom, he doesn't need it. Why would I spend that money? And so I think some of that is getting parents to kind of understand not every job requires 4-year. Actually, the vast majority don't. Some require 2 years, some require the training that we do at our technical colleges and the certification. And there are things where students can go right out of high school, right out of a program at the technical college, and they're going to make more money than, unfortunately, the certified teachers that we have in our high schools, and they'll have no debt and be able to go. So some of that is we still are working on the mindset of parents and grandparents and folks in the community that it's okay to go right to work. In fact, that's the best option. The other part, I think, is students and parents being aware of the opportunities. The technical college system, the Georgia DOE, Tim and I were out in the hallway talking. We have great opportunities. We built great programs. We've built opportunities like our accelerated career diploma that lets students replace academic coursework, high school courses, with college level technical certification. We have our programs like our Dual Achievement High School, which does something very similar for students who want to come out of the normal. These are the ones who would never want to walk in the halls of the high school again, but they're ready to get to work. But folks maybe don't know about that. Our counselors, we've continued to work to try to educate our counselors that the technical colleges, and I'll just say it, are not a less than. The technical colleges are doing great work and have great opportunities, and in fact are I'd say dollar for dollar, the best deal in Georgia, in my opinion. And I'm glad we're recording this so that the commissioner hopefully sees that later. But we have those opportunities. And we continue, I think the barrier is getting that education, and some of it's on us. I've always said that. If I'm going to say that there's an issue, I'll own my part in it too. Some of it's on us in the technical college system and the sort of how are we getting out? How are we helping our colleges? Because our colleges are doing great work. I mean, in fact, Columbus Tech, I know, has an upcoming counselor workshop where they're going to talk about all those programs. Well, how do we support them as a system and statewide level where we do that for our colleges and continue to get the word out on the great opportunities?
Thank you. Tim, as you respond as well and offer your reflections on barriers, could you also speak to, and we'll double down on this notion around lack of awareness? How do we improve the awareness gap, which appears to be part of a barrier?
Well, I think it goes back to the K-5 standards. It's pretty simple. If the teacher is teaching students about different careers in the kindergarten through fifth grade level, they're hearing it at a very early age, and that historically has not happened in the past. There's bits and pieces of it has happened, obviously best practices here and there, but to now have a method and a standard policy, a standard operating procedures, it actually will push that down into the elementary level. The middle school side of, as far as middle school is, the connections pieces where they've been exposed to different careers. But again, it goes back to the awareness, the exposure, but it also goes back, we've been talking a little bit about industry here, and I can tell you it's about the relationships. And I think those educators, wherever level they are, K-12, they need industry partners to be a part of their team. And I know here in Muskogee they have a great partners in the education program through the Chamber of Commerce, and that's always been a voice to get guest speakers, to get field trips, to get the things that sometimes you may not have an opportunity to just walk into a schoolhouse and see. It gives them the outside world, and it brings the outside world into the inside of the walls of that school. So I think, again, awareness.
Tim, while you've got the mic, could you speak to externships and the connection and the value to educators?
Absolutely. So our teachers every year, our CTAE teachers of Georgia, have the opportunity to do an externship of about 40 hours. They can go on to work sites. They sign up for whatever particular field that they would choose. Obviously, this is anyone that's K-5 through middle school and high school. We've been focused on middle school and high school in the last few years, but I'll say that the opportunity is there for our counselors to get out and see, our teachers to get out and see what goes on in the workplace. And it will help develop those relationships. They're paid a small stipend for their time, but the biggest takeaway from that is to develop that relationship. We have a lot of, right here in this Muskogee County area, we have a lot of companies who have opened up their doors and invited our teachers in to show them how this math problem that they're teaching in class is an applicable situation out there in the work on the floor of the shop or whatever it may be. So 100% supporting externships for teachers.
Thank you. So the next question is for all panelists. Tell us about your work and how you are transforming education to meet current and emerging workforce needs in Alabama and or Georgia. What's new, what's novel, or perhaps what have we overlooked?
I would say for our office, one of the things that we're working on that is new and novel is a shift away from focusing on the degree or the diploma as the indicator, and having a more focus on the competencies that it represents. One of the issues is when I walk into as a high school student or a community college or a university student, when I walk in with that degree or diploma in my hand and I give it to an employer, they have no idea what that represents. They know that it means that I finished school, but let's just own it. We kind of do this to ourselves a little bit, both K-12 and at the university level. If a student comes in and hands me a high school diploma, my first thought is not, oh, well, here's a well-trained, highly qualified individual that is ready to go to work. It's not the first thing you think. And we do that to ourselves sometimes by pursuing goals like higher graduation rates over goals like better quality graduates. So if you feel hit by that, I'm sorry. But if you've got a 99.9% graduation rate, consider this. So your graduation day is May 21st or whatever, right? You got 400 kids walking across the field, and on this side of the field, they are high school seniors. And then they meet some principal or college seniors or whatever. And they meet some principal or administrator right here in the middle, and they shake their hand and they get a diploma, and now you're a graduate. So you went from student to graduate, and then when you walk down that side of the field, what are you? An unemployed adult. So you went through 3 phases of life in 150 yards.
Without
right
even
there,
knowing it, right?
Without even realizing it. And that piece of paper in your hand generally is not representing. I made a note when Armand was up here talking for Micron a while ago, and he was talking about the things that they were looking for and the credentials they were looking for. He didn't say diploma or degree. He said he wanted these particular industry certifications because those are tied to specific competencies. So that's a big part of what we're trying to do in Alabama across all education. And y'all, I'm not anti-university or community college. Our community colleges, every one of them has apprenticeship programs, 22 community colleges, 96 different occupations being trained with apprenticeships across those, thousands of apprentices going out of there. But it's the connection to the employer side. Real quick test, who is the customer in the education system? Did I steal your thing? Who's the customer? Who's the customer? What? Students? Wrong. It's the employer. The student is the product of our education system. Now that some folks will get mad at me about that and say, well, that demeans the position of the student. It does not. I heard somebody use the term earlier, an uncut gem. That's exactly what our students are. They have intrinsic value when they walk in the door. If we apply the correct treatments to them, polish them, shape them in the right way, when we send them out, they're more valuable than when they came in, but they're still a product. So we've got to go to our customer and determine what the customer needs out of our product, not focus everything on the inputs. We've got to focus on the outcomes. I'll stop preaching.
Good sermon there. All right, yes.
I want to ask the question to the audience. Just raise your hand if you've ever heard of Caterpillar. Okay. That's a recognizable credential that our heavy equipment operating students in Georgia get. So everyone in this room, having operated one or not, recognizes that credential. That's the importance of, industry recognized credentialing. So in talking about successful programs, we've propped up 25, when I say propped up, we've created 25 new heavy equipment programs in Georgia in the last 4 years. And that is with the blessing of the legislators who backed us with the money for the programs. There are 25 programs geographically spread throughout Georgia. The Georgia Highway Association has basically supported us all the way through, but we go back to that industry partnership. The teachers, the districts, they all have that industry support. So those students who are in that heavy equipment operator class, it's a class that basically teaches you how to operate heavy equipment, excavators and dozers, and they're 16, 17, 18 years old. They leave, if they successfully pass the class, with a Caterpillar certification. And so those students are instantly hireable when they walk across that stage and become part of the working world. And they can then pursue, if they want to go to whatever college they want to go to. But really good jobs, if you drive around Georgia much, you'll see that almost every intersection we have is under construction. And I think that will continue for a long, long time. So as you look at the infrastructure bills and things of that sort nationally, the need is there. I'll say this, we do capstone projects, so the commercial piece of this and application of credentialing is taught all on simulation. However, at the end of the day, the students do their, quote, final on the steel. And that's on a job site where a local industry partner has said, hey, come on out, operate my equipment. And I'll say these things. We have two programs right here in this West Central Georgia, one at Jordan and one at Harris County. They've been very successful. Those students are going to work as soon as they graduate. Some are going to work prior to graduation, where they're working work-based learning in their junior and during their senior year. The part of it that I want you to take away is we can't fund, as educators, $500,000 piece of equipment sitting there for a student to operate. Just the time loss alone on that piece of equipment is huge. But when you have 2 or 3 or 4 contractors that are supporting those school programs, and they are bringing each piece of equipment to the table, if you will, and providing that resource, we did some numbers on this. It would take about $2 million a year of rental in the equipment business if we rented the equipment to be able to do just the finals that we do. And so I'll say this, it's the relationship between industry and the school systems and those teachers, that they provide the training, they provide everything. But I go back to that certification. Who in here knows Caterpillar? That's a recognizable industry credential. And that's what we're always trying to seek, is what are those recognizable credentials? Thank you.
In Alabama, I can think of a few things that we're really working hard on. One is the credentials as well. We want all of our students to have a credential, so we're expanding that list. We've been working with the community college system on the Skills for Success credentials for our students, and those are really a partnership with ACCS and our workforce there in Alabama. We're proud of that. We also have really kind of shifted focus to a CTE completer. So we still want students to explore, but we also would really like them to kind of hone in on what they want to do and have the education and training. And so that has required us, as we've redone courses of study, that we include more courses and go a little bit deeper and involve our workforce partners in that discussion. Just this last session, we passed the workforce diploma pathway. So students now will take, if they choose this option, which we're going to call option B because it's the same diploma, but they'll be able to take more of the courses that are in the field that they hope to go to work in. And then next month at the State House, we will have a Be Pro, Be Proud 18-wheeler simulation come, and Alabama just purchased this. It is full of CTE simulators, and this is a way for us to get to our rural districts. So those students, the younger students who are not having access to career tech, or there's certain programs that are not in their particular communities, we're hoping to take CTE to them.
Well, Laura, you segued right into what I was going to talk about. We call that accelerated career diploma here. We used to call it option B. And when I was a principal, that drove me nuts. And I won't say what I used to say in private, what it reminded me of. So we changed that recently in the last couple of years to accelerated career diploma. And I would say that's something that we're doing that's probably underused at the moment. I will say we have doubled over the last couple of years. We are up over 1,000 students statewide. In my opinion, it should be more. There is a superintendent in one of our districts who's heavily involved, who is actually, when it was option B, used to say, this should be option A for the majority of the kids. And I may hit some people in their feels here, but we all know, and I'm going to be conservative here, that 50% of the kids that we send on to four-year colleges have no business going there. And what vets that out is the graduation rates later. and the completion rates. So are we doing what is best for our students, whether it's in Georgia or Alabama, by continuing to push them into something that they're not going to be successful at? We're just sending folks into a meat grinder. So when we looked at it in Georgia, we have the accelerated career diploma option now, where students, again, this is not a less than, I will preach that all the time. They are replacing those extra world history, Brit Lit, whatever you want to call it, and I always dance around that dangerously as my wife is a literature teacher. But they are replacing that with college-level credentials, college-level technical work that is recognized by business and industry. So I think as we continue to grow in that, that is something that Georgia is supporting. Here's the other thing. That doesn't preclude a student from continuing on to get their 2-year degree from the technical college system here in Georgia. And once they have that 2-year, they can go on to a private or a USG. So we bring that up as well, as this isn't a dead end diploma. This was not designed to say, hey, we're just throwing kids to work. No, it's to set them up for the career that they are interested in. Along with that work, Governor Kemp last year started looking at a high demand career initiative, which has just come out recently and some of you may be aware of. It is a long list of codes and job titles, but that will actually drive our work with the accelerated career options. It's going to bring that out to over 600 technical certificate of credit programs that will be available for high school students to use for accelerated career. It's also, as Tim and I do our work, will help align as we continue to look at the alignment between what happens in the high school courses and how that aligns to the technical college system courses and awards. I think that's the governor's intent, is that that high demand list will also guide where the money goes as they look at programming and equipment, as well as our articulation. We have over, I think, 28 articulation agreements with Georgia DOE, where students who complete those career tech pathways and then completed an assessment can go to a technical college and receive anywhere from 1 to 4 of the courses in their pathway of the college. So really in Georgia, continuing to align, streamline, make those clear, seamless, clear transitions for students. But going back to, they got to know about it and they've got to use them, because we could build all the highways in the world, but if nobody drives on them, they're useless.
Any other responses before we move on? Okay. I'd like for you to now focus on, and we've sort of talked about this a bit, and it's really been a running theme throughout the course of the day, that sort of the at-risk student. How are we ensuring that we identify them early on? We provide a variety of options for them to consider, making them aware of those pathways. How are we identifying, what sort of things are you seeing? Are we identifying them early enough? And many of these students are falling in that 50% category that you talked about. We're sending them off to what I would suggest post-secondary education, and the retention numbers do show that they're not staying for a number of reasons. So my question is, what are we doing from your vantage point? What do you see us doing from the educational standpoint in really identifying that at-risk student to ensure that there is a seamless pathway for educational transition? And this is for any taker.
Well, I'll jump in.
I'm looking at you, yes.
I know, you were staring me down. So, well, I think we have seen with creating the programs like the Dual Achievement Program, which again, the high schools that are run at the technical colleges, our college and career academies, working with our students and focusing on those students who need work. I always bring up our college and career academies because that's where I started. So I will, as a full disclosure, that's where I started out teaching. But many times, and I hear it over and over again across our 58 CCAs, the students that are at risk or causing the principals to climb the walls at the regular high school go to the college and career academy, where now they can put their hands on to those career tech programs and get connected to school. Suddenly they're not a problem anymore. And now that they're connected to school, they see the why. Because everybody goes to school for a reason. I went to talk, cut up, and play sports. I'll just be honest. But we see now that students that get into CTAE, who attend our college and career academies, who do pathways, who get into dual enrollment, those graduation rates are 95% and above. So we know that that's how we reach our at-risk students, and it starts with the counselors, it starts with the advisors, and seeing that student, we're so quick to label a kid as a bad student, right? Like, and it could be because that kid is gifted and they're bored. Could be that they have other things going on at home. Could be that they don't see a connection. But CTAE tends to be the salve there that helps that out. And I think that that's where we've started to see it. We're seeing some of our career academies that are working to identify students in 8th and 9th grade to have that accelerated career diploma discussion, to go ahead and start talking with the parent. We also have, after 10th grade, 11th grade, our dual achievement program will start taking students at 16, that the counselors and the school districts are working with our colleges and our program at the state level to identify those kids and get them to a dual achievement academy site. And then I think even if all those miss, we also, when we were talking about adult learners, we also have Career Plus High School in Georgia, which is where a adult who is come out well past their high school age can earn their high school diploma along with their technical certificates of credit. So I say all the time, it's real hard in Georgia. You got to work harder to not get your high school diploma because of the opportunities that we offer. But again, it goes back to that advisement and everybody being at the table. Business and industry, post-secondary, secondary, the community leaders need to be at the table so that everybody is aware of the opportunities and everyone's speaking the same language.
Intentionality and the alignment. Tim
Absolutely.
and then Josh, I think you both are holding the mics.
You know, I probably was one of those students, and I say that jokingly, but my welding teacher made a difference in my life. I come from a good parents and good home and all of that good stuff, but school just was not my thing, and I'm just being very honest. But the day that the teacher showed me how to weld, and I was halfway good at it and pursued it, and then he got me involved back then, was called VICA, which is now Skills USA. And so CTSOs, Career Technical Student Organizations, is our sport. And so I wasn't an athlete, and I got cut off the freshman baseball team, and I'll never forgive that coach. He just didn't know who he missed. But my welding teacher picked me up and then, said, hey, Tim, let's go try this. And I could halfway weld. And I still talk about it. I'm still just a halfway welder. But I say that jokingly. But it's that relationship. It was the opportunity and the exposure, again, and the awareness for that teacher to say, hey, they recognize that spark. They put the spark in my eye. I was saying literally in welding. It's a cheap joke. Just bear with me. I appreciate it. Anyway, that being said, it's those relationships, and it was giving me opportunities. So I went and competed and things like that, where I got to share what I did with other folks and learned about that network that was out there that I didn't know existed. And I'll say this, our students who are involved with CTSOs and they finish those pathways in Georgia, the number just rolled out last week from Dr. Wall, who's our deputy superintendent. We're at 97.2% completion rate with a CTAE completer. So that is huge. If we have a concentrator situation, which is 2 classes in a pathway, we're at 97% on the graduation rate. So when you're that close, and then I'll add this number too, just for good stuff, work-based learning, the graduation rate in Georgia is 99.6%. So there's almost no holes there. So I'll say this as I'm a product of this. I sit here today because of that welding teacher 40 years ago, saw something, said, hey, go try this, and I did. And so getting those students involved is the secret to success. But building those relationships is the total recipe for success. So thanks.
Thank you. Josh?
Thank you. A couple of quick clarifications here. We're using the term post-secondary as if it means college and university.
Thank you very much for addressing that. I was about,
Post-secondary means after high school. Everybody is going to have post-secondary education if they want to have a career with an upward trajectory. And we need to stop pigeonholing that to be college or university credit. It can be these credentials. It can be an apprenticeship program. It can be whatever. When we're talking about people, and we've kind of highlighted here K-12 students with barriers. There are a lot of students walking around college and university campuses right now who need that same advisement. The only difference is they're already about 40 grand in debt. And nobody has told them what they can do with the thing they're doing. They just kind of kept on moving through that path. So they need that same advisement. And one of our big emphasis with our programs in the state is that there are learners with barriers of all ages. We have a registered apprenticeship program with inmates that are still in prison, but they are eligible for work release. So they leave the prison and go out and work as diesel techs, work on the job, doing their apprenticeship, make a decent wage, which, by the way, is critically important for a lot of the folks with these barriers that we're talking about. A job cures most ills. So if you can build an earn and learn model into whatever you're trying to teach, then you can help people get over what we call the benefits cliffs. Have y'all talked about that today, benefits cliffs? So I'm working at the Dollar General. I'm making $8 an hour running the cash register. One thing you know about me is I have work ethic, because that's a terrible job and the pay's not very good, but I'm showing up. So I've got the secret sauce already. I've got work ethic. And you hang out a sign and you say, I need to hire electricians, or I need to hire school teachers, or I need to hire welders, or whatever. And it says, brain surgeons, $50 an hour, apply today, start tomorrow. Are there any people in the room who could take the job as brain surgeons tomorrow? Would it make any difference if the sign said $100 an hour or $5,000 an hour? Would you be able to take the job tomorrow? No, because you don't have the skills to be a brain surgeon. So you've got to have a vehicle that will let you access those skills. And that vehicle is different for a person with barriers. Whether they're in high school or whether they're a graduate or a dropout of high school, it doesn't matter. They've got to be able to get over that benefits cliff. So that young lady who's running the cash register for $8 an hour at the Dollar General would love to go be a nurse or a school teacher or whatever we need filled. She'd love to make that kind of money. But right now, what's she doing at $8 an hour? Surviving, getting by. And I can't starve to death and go be a teacher, and go to college for 4 years, and, oh, by the way, work for at least one full semester of completely unpaid internship, or do a nurse and be a nurse and be a clinical's same kind of placement. So for our university and college partners, we are really, really working with them to try to identify where these traditional methods of post-secondary training that we have kind of allowed to become the norm don't work for those non-traditional students. Whether it's alternative scheduling, whatever that looks like, whether it's earn and learn models to help that person pay for that, which, by the way, if I'm making $8 an hour and you offer me a job at $10 an hour, sometimes folks don't take that. And why? Well, $10 an hour is not enough to make it so I can now afford to go to school, but it is enough to make it so that I lose my housing voucher or whatever that is. So these are very real case-by-case things that have to be addressed for these individual students with barriers, no matter what their ages are. And it takes a concerted effort, and it takes it at multiple levels of the educational system to accomplish that.
one of the at-risk populations that has not surfaced in our conversations today, and that's around students with disabilities. What's your perspective on that?
I would say anecdotally, we have saw a lot of students with disabilities or students requiring learning support that do very well in CTAE. Again, hands-on, demonstrating. I used to call it playing school. We know there are students who do very well at playing school. I go and do homework and I sit and I raise my hand and those kind of things. But a student who needs a little different support may not do that well. But again, we would see those students do well in CTAE settings with our college and career academies. We do have those students in our dual achievement programs and at our colleges as well. And every one of our colleges has student support services to work with those. But again, I think sometimes people don't know, or think they can't do. And I will say, again, anecdotally, I had 2 or 3 students in my time as a teacher, and some of my favorite students who would be self-contained in all their other courses, and then would come and be a top student in my law and justice program because of the way that they were able to put their hands on, the way they were interested and connected to that topic. And so I will always say I have a soft spot for students that require learning support, students with disabilities, and we could always do more and could always use more support for those students. But I would just say that I think CTAE is, again, something that helps connect and serve those populations.
Thank you. Laura?
I want to echo what Bennett is saying. I know that the teachers and the administrators in the room have noticed that there's an increase in 504s and students with disabilities, and so they're coming to career tech classrooms, and we want them to be successful citizens. So what better place to have them to teach them a skill and to teach them how to be productive. And so I will say, when we do our courses of study in Alabama, we always include special education teachers and administrators in the conversations to make sure that we're writing a curriculum that can be used for special needs students.
And let's remember, they're employees, they're potential employees for the workforce. So that's another data point that we have to consider.
You know, when you ask the question, immediately in my mind pops up a student, and I'm not going to call that person's name, that had a situation. And, you know, in working with and training that student and getting to know that student, to watch him grow through the process, you know, when I would go to the IEP meetings, and I was the welding teacher, machining teacher at the time, situation, I would have good things to say about what that person was doing in the IEP, and then I would hear the other ones, and way back, I would think, as a new teacher, I would think, what am I doing wrong? But it wasn't what I was doing wrong, it was what that student's interest was in. And I think that's the key to it. You know, he or she may be strong in one thing and not so strong in another. But that picture of the person that I was thinking of was a little later in life with work-based learning. And this student was interested in interning at a local Pratt Whitney here in Columbus. We had a program with them, still do. And so I went to him and talked to him, and he interviewed, and we prepped him, and he was selected. And so he went through the process, about a 6-month process of jet engine mechanic, and they hired him full time. And I backed that up to say 2 or 3 years later, we ended up in some meetings, and he ended up being on a panel very similar to what we are today. And just a tremendous young man. One of the biggest things, he purchased the first home for his family, for his parents, as he was became more and more invested in the job out there and made more money. But how cool is that, you know, to take that situation? But I'll say this, it's about developing independence for these students, showing them that they can get out here and make a living and be successful, regardless of their situation, and giving them opportunities. You know, I still see this young man, and probably if you look back on his IEP probably 15 years ago now, and then if they could fast forward and truly see what he's doing now, rebuilding jet engines as an inspector, he's truly in rocket science. And so there's no limits to this.
And what credential does he have?
He is a certified A&P mechanic for Pratt Whitney. And so, you know, I think sometimes we as educators, and I speak to this because I'm more of an educator than I am anything else, I think, is we sometimes put people in bad positions. And I don't mean that disrespectfully to anyone in the room. I think what we have to do is we have to be able to dig into that hole and find out what their capacity is or what their capabilities are and grow them. You know, it's our job as educators. So thanks.
Okay, yes.
I would like to add just one thing I did when I was the CEO, like Tim, I was CEO of Rockdale Career Academy, and we brought our transition program in the district to the Career Academy because the belief was they just didn't need life skills, they needed work skills. And so I would challenge educators in the room to have that thought of how are you integrating your technical college, your CTAE programs, the basic workforce certificates the technical college offers, training that's offered through the economic development in the technical. how are you offering that to your special populations? Because again, we're talking independence and students that are going to have a life that if you don't give them life and work skills, eventually mom and dad are gone. And, you know, we want them to be able to support themselves and be able to live on their own down the road.
Thank you. All right, so we're going to circle back to the opening question. Your vision for this seamless transition. If everything were going well, we had all the resources, all of the alignment that we talked about. How do we know that we're successful, that we've done things right? How can we measure the success of the transition programs in optimizing student outcomes?
I will say our top line metric for the Office of Apprenticeship is employers served, not the number of apprentices that we have. We, of course, do track that, but the number of employers served. So we are a little north of 500 employers now that we are serving through different models of apprenticeship and others who apprenticeship wasn't the right tool for, so we did other types of work-based learning, interns and co-ops and whatever. The thing that to me would be the signal that, okay, we've got it right, is that those employers are satisfied with the product that is coming to them. Over, since I started as a teacher now, 25 years of doing this, the thing that I've consistently heard from employers is I need people who will show up every day, show up on time, pass a drug test, get along with other people, and put up their cell
Sure,
phone.
that's not the first one, the drug test?
Yeah, it's not the first one.
Okay.
At this point, if you're just a little high, it's probably okay. But those are the big five. I mean, and they really mean that. Employers.
We need to
I mean,
strike
hey.
that from the record.
No, put this on the record. This is a fact. Some employers are so desperate, they are absolutely dropping the drug test from their hiring requirements, and that's a problem. That says something about the product that we're sending them. They have had to lower their standard to be willing to accept that. But if we, as in the K-12 world, if you can get those points across, so we talked about awareness, exploration, preparation, but we also put it another way, and it starts at learning about work, learning to work, and then learning at work. In K-12, we've at least got to be able to get them learning to work before they go out the door. If we have successfully taught them not how to do a specific job, but learned how to work, which includes those big five things, but also about just having some grit, sticking with, learning new processes or whatever it is that goes on from there, then we've been successful at the K-12 level. At the post-secondary, whether that's an apprenticeship or a university or college level, whatever that is, that success is going to look a little bit different. To me, I look at the education provider. If the education provider, whether it's college or university particularly, can understand that these people coming to them, think of them as employees for whom somebody is sending you, they need professional development. That's your job as the post-secondary provider, is to provide professional development for somebody's employee. And if you flip that mindset, now we're not building all of our structures around this 4-year residential model that everybody's going to come live here on campus and do it the way that we've done it since 1920. We're now going to be more responsive to the needs of the learner and to the employer, and build our scheduling and build our teaching and build our models. We talk about the kids that do better in the shop classes, the tech classes, whatever they are. That says more about the class than it does about the kid. A well-run science or math or history class, any of those can be just as successful, but that's not the way we teach them. So if we were teaching those classes more like the CTAE classes, then we would see better success for those. And then I'll close with this one controversial statement. I think every learner needs an IEP. So there's a special ed teacher in here right now ready to choke me to death already. But it doesn't mean, I'm not talking about the books of paperwork and the deadlines and the meetings and all that kind of stuff. We as educators at any level have to be prepared to individualize the plan for that learner. Whatever that person needs, whether it's I've got learning disabilities, or I've got I'm from a low socioeconomic background, or I'm from a very high socioeconomic background and hadn't ever hit a lick of a snake in my life, and then I show up to work and think I'm supposed to be the CEO. That's a problem too. So individualizing that education is going to be key.
I agree with most of a lot of what he says, but it's really simple for me. We need to stop focusing so much on getting the kids graduated and having this plan and making sure that they are trained up to go be very productive members of their community.
In the technical college system, every year we measure our job placement rate and infield placement rate. Happy to say job placement rate is well into the 90s and infield is in the 80%, I believe. Again, Commissioner, if you're watching this, I didn't bring my notes. But they are both very high. But I think those are excellent things to look at if we look at it as a whole, no matter whether they come out of the high school, technical college, university, additional training, military. What kind of life did that person have after we've trained them and touched them? That's what we should really look to. And again, I agree. When you make the goal graduation, that's what people focus on. We got to get you graduated, and we might help you a little bit with what you're going to do in the future. But I think if we look at the future goal, everything else takes care of itself.
Thank you. Tim, you get the last word before we open the floor for Q&A.
So real quick, just seamless relationships transitioned into seamless transitions, which transitions that into a successful life. It's that simple.
Very good. Yes, thank you. All right. Powerful discussion here. Thank you so much for your nuggets of wisdom. One of the things that I want to underscore and to share my bit of 2 cents before I open the floor for questions, and Josh had really hit the nail on the head. We have to be mindful of how we describe and how we talk about this post-secondary education experience. Over the course of my 20 plus years in higher education, I've observed that we just put folks in buckets. So we say you're either going to go to college or you're not college material. And that's sort of, when I hear that language, it's like nails on a chalkboard when I hear an individual say to another person, you're not college material. That is not true. Post-secondary education includes 2-year and 4-year. Period. Questions of our panelists and industry-based. Thank you. Thank you very much. Questions?
So if the goal is seamless transition and we're trying to help students decide where they need to go after high school, does that still put the decision and the role of guidance counseling back in the K-12 environment?
I would say, having been a principal, had wonderful counselors. They like to be called professional school counselors now, I have learned. Thank you. Okay. Speaking to my people out there, I know, I made that mistake. Yes, but yes, and that's what we've been used to, is there's one person in the building who's going to look at you and meet you and say, you know what, this is what you need to go do. That's not the case. We've had discussions at the state level several times, and my thing is that I think business, industry, college, 2-year, 4-year, everyone needs to be at the table working for the marketing of these programs, the advising, the information, and working together. Because you just simply cannot put everything on the counselors, because they are, at times 400, 500, 600 plus students that they're having to work with. And guess what, guys? One crisis during a school day, they're done. So we have to be others, the administrators, folks at the state, folks at colleges. We are all on the same team, because the ultimate goal is to get the student on the right path, not have one person be responsible for that.
If you are a school counselor, please stand to be recognized. We thank you for your service. General Helms has indicated I have time for one more question, and it's got to be a tight question. Time for one more question.
While you're looking for that volunteer, I would just amend that answer and also add that the advisement can't stop in the secondary level. It's got to be post-high school graduation. It's got to continue. Otherwise, we'll have kids lost in the big system.
don't see any hands raised. Thank you to Bennett, Laura, and Josh, and Tim. Thank you so much for your advice, expertise, and just staying the course and supporting our students and our communities. Thank you. General Helms.